Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Talking Gun series on the upriver crawfish. I'm your boy Sankar. Let's continue with the recap and analysis of the special operations in Ukraine, the operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine that was started on February 24th. The previous recaps went up to day 7. This is day 8, and in day 8, the highlights is the seizure of Enohoda, where the largest nuclear power plant in Europe is, and the tightening of the siege around Mariupol. So let's see the map. Has almost encircled uh, Kharkov. If you see there in the north. Okay, this is day 9. Once again, before I proceed, let me give shout out to Vologda Mapping. I'm using their maps. So let's begin. Day 9. Let's take a look at the map. Russians crossed the southern bog. You see there. Battle of Kharkiv continues. All right, this is day 10. Before we go into the mapping, if you're seeing, there's forces in the Kiev region. The there's no there's no serious battle really going on in Kiev. There are little tactical battles in the Kiev region, but I know the U.S. used that as U.S. media been using that to say that the Ukrainians are putting up some stiff resistance. No big resistance is happening in Kiev region. I'm sorry to say, there's not much fighting there. The Russians seem to be using Kiev just to hold those Ukrainian forces from going to the east, keep them occupied. I've also noticed that in the south area around Nikolaev area, the forces there also to keep those forces occupied. They're not seizing Nikolaev yet, and the Russians also have a naval, a marine unit on the seas around the Odessa area that keep forces in Odessa paying attention to that, keeping them honest over there. And this is all to keep those forces spread out and not concentrated so that they can seize Donetsk and Lugansk. The Russians are focusing all their efforts on the east, the eastern banks of the Dnieper River. This is the Dnieper River. And I think, and that's where we know the focus. In fact, today is the 26th. Yesterday, Russian General Staff did say the first phase of the operation is over, and what their focus is now is to clear out the Ukrainian forces from in Donetsk. So I'm sorry to for those who wanted to see the Russians fail, and listening to mainstream media, but that's BS. A lot of BS, a lot of nonsense stuff on coming up on YouTube. That's part of the reasons why they took the Russian media from on YouTube, so as to put a lot of lies and make it hard for people to debunk those lies. But let's take a look into day number 10. So the offensive to seize Slaviansk, that would be a personal favorite for me. So this is day 11 now, and there's forces here. As I stated, one of my personal favorite things I'm looking forward to is the liberation by the Russians of and the separatists liberating Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, because back in 2014 the separatists have to pull out of Slaviansk. It was a big deal because that's when the Ukrainians started using air power against them in the city, and a lot of people were killed there. So it will be a personal favorite for them to retake Slaviansk, and I think if there's one place where the Ukrainian people will be cheering, will be in Slaviansk. But as you notice here, there's this bolt coming out here, and there's this. Those are major operations trying to move into Donetsk and to be able to seize Slaviansk and Kramatorsk. So right around here, it's still in the Russian forces are pushing in the Kharkov region, and they're pushing towards Isium. Let's see the map. So as you see, you will notice that there will be developments along here. There will also be they will close out this area right above Mariupol. Mariupol is still in siege even today, the 26th of March. They're still clearing it out. For the most part, they almost finished clearing it out. And then there will be the battle of Izium right here. Now there's a strong Ukrainian force, defensive force along here on in Izium, and so it took some time to break out and to break out into Izium. Also, the Russian forces with their allies, the Holiopol, there's an area in Holiopol, they're taking. Now, if you're looking at the battle and what again, the Russians have actually already said this, but they will take over these areas. My bet is because Ukraine is frisky enough, they might take all these areas. I'm thinking they might take most of the areas east of the Dnieper River. This is the Dnieper River. I'm almost very certain. Why, I don't know whether they will go and take all this part. I'm suspecting they will. But I think that at the end of this, Ukraine will not have access to the sea. This whole area will be taken over. But anyway, let's see the map. So pay no attention to the noise from the mainstream media and those generals who are embarrassing themselves now. If you want to look at someone military who's talking sense, pay attention to Colonel Douglas McGregor. For all, right, this is day 13 and 14. The Russians will solidify, we capture these areas, which is making sure there's no possibility of Ukrainian forces freeing up the open and breaking through the cauldron in Mariupol. There will also be, you will also notice that the Russians will be advancing along this line. They're moving towards, so this year is Zaporozhye and this year is Yavorov. They're going, my bet is that they're going to bypass, and this is just my take. They're going to bypass Yavorov for now and go along the Dnieper River on the west bank of the Dnieper River and try to surround and seize the capital of Zaporozhye, so Zaporozhye city itself. They will seize that. Then before they will push on to Kivor Rog. That's my take on it. They could seize Kivor Rog, but my take is that they're going to push along this line and seize it. It will all depend too on how much resistance there. But they're keeping those forces occupied. So for the most part, from a strategic perspective, this battle is decided. The Kiev forces don't have a means to counterattack. There are small pushback here and there that they would do tactical stuff. Mostly it's with the Russians. What the Russians doing is they do what you call they do recon by fire, and then sometimes they might pull back. So as I was trying to say, mostly the Russians in what they're doing now to be, since they don't want to Fallujah the place, destroy the place with a lot of civilians there. So one of the things they're doing, they're utilizing recon by fire movement. So they will make a strong push into an area, test out the strength of the defense there, and if there's too much power there, they will pull out, and then sort that out, take out those resistance and nodes, and then before they go back in there. So that's what you see in some cases around Kiev. There's little they're consolidating their movements in the Kiev area and just extending their siege along this axis. Along this axis, they are not pushing to totally cut off Kiev yet. They push. There's a pin somewhere around here they want to seize, and then, but again, a lot of how you call it, a lot of civilians are there, so they're taking their time as they go and try to take over those regions. But Kiev, there's not real much forces, so all the resistance talk you hear about is nonsense. It's because the Russians don't yet want to seize Kiev. Could they seize it at a later date? Possibly. Or maybe they might just encircle it. But one of the things, they want a lot more people to leave the city, because Kiev is almost 3 million people in the city. So they want a lot more people to leave. Then they can sort those things out and sort that area out. But there's not much of all this talk about heroic stance in Kiev. No. If you want anything to come close to saying it's heroic, maybe you say Kharkov. But it's not really heroic either. So day 15, today is 16. That was around March 10 to 11. Yeah. As I said, these guys will push up this area. I don't believe they would take Kivor Rock before taking Zaporizhzhia. One thing, what the U.S. and NATO did to Ukraine, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Ukrainians, their greed, their leadership greed, and the hatred caused this as much as what the U.S. told them to do. So you can't totally blame only the U.S. But what the U.S. did to these people, to pump them up, to go and mess with Russia, knowing fully well that it can't come to their defense, is absolutely horrendous. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Now, they're going to lose a lot of their cities. They're going to lose a lot of places. And if Russia wants to be real an asshole, they will make sure Kiev no longer has access to the sea. I almost am very certain that that's going to happen. But as you see, you'll notice here, these forces, any of the forces here, they're going to be occupied, focusing on the people who the Russian advances here. These guys here might soon be encircled, and they've blocked Chernigov. Make sure that's blocked, Sumi. And actually, today, the 26th of March, they actually went into Slavotich, but no Ukrainian military were there, so they just went and walked into it. But let's see the map. So it's day 17 to day 18. That's March 12th to the 13th. Chernigov on the siege, Sumish on the siege, siege of Mariupol. Some different protests in. There are protests, and protests in Kherson for folks who are still pro Kiev, but what would they do? That's about all they can do. So the Russians going to secure this place. They're going to secure the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. I mean, it's just nonsense that the Ukrainians did to themselves and allowing the U.S. to pump them out to go against Russia. No one can help them because, as Putin has advised NATO, if they turn fool and try, he will put hands on them. All right. So we'll stop here on this one, and we'll move on from 19 to 28 in another clip. Thank you.